The Human Security Officer, Part 46. As Penn climbed, hand over hand, she took a moment to catch her breath. The rocky surface was tough, but she felt determined to make it up and out of the chasm. "Is your height something you worked for?" she asked, breaking the silence. Gareth paused for a moment, slightly surprised by the question. "Huh? Your height? Is it something you had to work on, or is it more about genetics?" He chuckled softly. "It's completely out of my control, just like yours, if my reading was correct." "Yep, that's true for humans, much to many people's chagrin," she replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. "So, do humans generally prefer to be taller?" Gareth asked, shifting his grip as they continued to ascend. "Quite the opposite," Penn said. "Traditionally, taller is preferred, although I suppose it's mostly up to individual taste." Gareth nodded thoughtfully. "And with Wylands, is a shorter partner preferred?" "Well, as you say, there's individual taste, but yes, for the most part. That's been my experience." "Oh, so you have some experience there?" Am I about to get the scoop on Gareth's romantic pursuits? Penn teased. He let out a dry laugh. "Not particularly. A few prospects here and there, but none really pan out. The most promising one turned quite sour, to be honest." "Oh no?" Penn said, testing a foothold. "Oh, indeed. What a troublesome plague it is when a partner becomes a competitor." "She took issue with my career choice," Gareth said, the mocking tone evident in his voice. "Juicy," Penn remarked, raising an eyebrow. "Juicy? Really?" Gareth replied, slightly bemused. "I get it, but that sounds weird to me. Anyway, I took Deeg's offer a few weeks into our courting. I thought she'd be happy for me, but she took it more as an insult." "An insult?" Penn questioned, puzzled. "I told you Wayland society has been travel and trade-based for most of our history. Our social standing is based on having employees or workers. There's a lot of importance placed under position in the hierarchy. The head of a trade company stands higher than a warehouse worker, for instance. Being the captain of a ship is respectable, especially a well-known one, but to work under another is seen as less than ideal." "So? You're a first mate. You have a whole ship under you besides Deeg," Penn argued. "True, but ours is an independent operation. Even being a captain would be seen more as a worker than an administrator, and I'm not even that. When she found out, I became too far below her station to be seen with," Gareth explained, his expression growing somber. "I see. I'm sorry. Who knows? Maybe it's for the best. If she cares that much about something like that, you might not have been happy anyway." "True. I don't consider it a loss, honestly. I'll never know for sure, but I'm happy here. Well, happy on the nebula, that is. I'm not thrilled about clinging to your back as you pull us up and out of a chasm in the middle of nowhere." "Did you just swear?" Penn asked, surprised. "I might not have your looser vocabulary, but I figured the situation warranted it, don't you think?" "I suppose. And what do you mean by looser vocabulary?" "I'll drop you," she retorted, though Gareth could hear the humor in her voice. They fell silent for a time, focusing on the climb. Penn needed to concentrate on the last stretch of the chasm wall, which had become a bit more treacherous than the rest. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the edge. Penn pushed herself up as far as she could, and Gareth took the cue, scrambling off of her. She hoisted herself up and crawled a few feet on all fours before finally collapsing on the ground. With a heavy exhale, she rolled onto her back and wiped the sweat from her forehead. "Sheesh. Not bad," she said, breathing heavily. "What?" Gareth asked, looking over at her. "The climb. Not a bad workout. Used some muscles I've clearly been neglecting. We can rest if you need," he offered. "Just for a minute, and then I'll be good. How are we doing on time?" He glanced up at the sky and then down at the data pad strapped to his arm. Plenty of light left in the day. You know how far we have left to go? He inquired. Not too far. I can't imagine the ship got too much further before touching down. I hope they're okay, Gareth said, concern creeping into his voice. I'm sure, Penn replied, shrugging off the worry. You know, one might think you don't care much. You don't seem to be that worried, Gareth pointed out. I'm not, she replied matter-of-factly. That's quite cold, he muttered, glancing away. I trust them to be able to handle themselves. Our job is to handle our situation, theirs is to handle theirs. No point in worrying. They are children, she reasoned. That brought Gareth's gaze back to her. Her logic struck him. Of course, he trusted Deeg. Was it insulting to worry? After all, Deeg had a knack for slipping out of any predicament, and to worry almost began to sound like doubt. They're all capable people, he conceded. Exactly, Penn said, stretching her fist into the air before righting herself. She brushed off the pine needles and knelt down to let Gareth back on her back. He climbed aboard, and they were off again. For a while, their conversation was sparse, but after about half an hour, Gareth's curiosity got the better of him. How about you? He asked, breaking the silence. How about me? Penn responded, somewhat puzzled. Any romantic conquests for the ex-soldier? Never really had much interest, to be honest. No crushes during my childhood and no real interest after I joined up. There wasn't anyone interested in me either. Well, I suppose. Nah, never mind. No. What? Gareth urged, intrigued. I suppose there was a pilot, she said, hesitating. The people who fly attack craft? Gareth clarified. Yeah. He was an arrogant ass, which I suppose is par for the course when it comes to pilots, but he just would not leave me alone. Never disrespectful, but persistent for sure. He'd always try to chat me up, get me to go on a date with him. Every time he flew support for us, he'd say I owed him a drink or coffee. I see, Gareth said, trying to conjure a face for this man. He imagined a grinning figure, full of bravado and laughter. Nothing came of it? He asked, curious. Nah. Like I said, I really didn't have much interest. He was cute, I suppose, but I didn't have time to be messing around. Eventually, he got the hint. He didn't stop, but it became more of a friendly banter thing. Gareth didn't voice it, but he was surprised Penn didn't have more suitors. By both human and Wayland standards, her height would likely attract many. Perhaps she was simply being modest, he thought. As day turned to evening, Penn altered their course to draw closer to the river. Soon enough, they were scanning the area for a suitable spot to make camp. The previous night had been spent under a denser canopy, but this time they discovered a spacious rock formation that jutted out, providing enough space for them. Penn followed her routine, setting up a small fire and boiling some water before wading into the river to relax. Gareth noticed more quickly this time how the sounds of the forest began to shift. Oddly, while the day was not silent, countless creatures became active at night. Most were unseen, but their sounds were unmistakable. It unnerved him, yet he recalled Penn's earlier words, sound is good, silence is bad. After Penn had settled down, but before she fell asleep, Gareth turned to her. What about food? Something we've been neglecting until now. Are you going to be okay? Was her first question. I should be fine, but I was more worried about you. I've seen you eat every day on the ship, and now it's been almost 2 days without anything. It's not ideal, but we have water. I'm not sure I have a solution other than to make it to the ship, if I'm being honest. I'll live. We can't be too far now. This is Terran plant life, right? There's nothing edible around here? Gareth asked, a hint of worry in his tone. If it becomes a problem, I'll just eat you, she joked. Not funny, he replied, though he could hear the humor in her voice. You have a point, though. Maybe in the morning I'll look around for a berry bush or something. A non-poisonous one preferably, she chuckled, turning over as she made to doze off. Gareth got up, ready to move away from the fire. Pen turned back over, a hint of concern in her voice. I was kidding about. Yeah, I know. I figured I'd go ahead and make myself useful while you sleep. I'll wake you up with some food. Oh, thank you, she said appreciatively. Yeah, I got you, he mimicked her phrase playfully. Pen smiled before turning away, and Gareth glanced around. Berries were a concept he mostly understood through reading. Waylon fruits were massive by comparison. It wasn't that they were entirely alien, but the idea of tiny fruits was almost funny to him. He activated the data pad on his arm and began scanning the area for berry bushes. It didn't take long to find several varieties. Unfortunately, every single one he encountered in the immediate area was toxic. They would be lethal for him to ingest, and while they might not kill Pen, they wouldn't be fun either. He sighed, feeling a bit defeated, and moved further from the camp. Hesitant to stray too far from safety, he spotted another bush that caught his eye. It was plump, curling around a couple of trees, and it seemed to have berries. Gareth paused for a moment, steeling himself before making his way over. The fruit was peculiar in appearance, dark, resembling a collection of tiny bubbles. The most similar thing he could think of was roe, almost like black dollops of fish roe. As he reached to grab one, he froze, noticing a creature peering out from the bush. He hadn't seen it until now, blending perfectly with its surroundings. The creature was furry, wide-eyed, and had keen pointed ears. Its lip curled up in a snarl, revealing sharp rows of teeth clearly evolved for eating meat. It let out a low, reverberating growl that sent a shiver down Gareth's spine. Time seemed to freeze as he sat there, locked in the wolf's gaze. What he had thought was a harmless bush turned into a potential threat. He could see the muscles in the creature's body tensing, ready to spring into action. Gareth quickly withdrew his hand, heart racing. He could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins as he took a step back, carefully watching the creature's movements. It was silent now, but he knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. The growl had been a warning, a promise of what could come if he made the wrong move. Okay, Gareth, think, he muttered to himself, scanning his surroundings for a potential escape route. He considered the distance to the camp and weighed his options. The last thing he wanted was to provoke the creature. The wolf-like creature seemed to lose interest in him for a moment, turning its attention to the forest around them. Gareth took the opportunity to back away slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and calm. Once he was a safe distance away, he turned and made a beeline for the campsite, heart still racing in his chest. When he returned, Pen was still resting by the fire. Gareth stood for a moment, taking a deep breath to steady himself. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, stirring slightly as she opened one eye. "Yeah, just found a creature," he said, trying to sound nonchalant. It didn't look friendly. "Really? What kind of creature?" "A wolf, I think." "Big and mean-looking," he replied, shaking his head. "Yikes. Glad you didn't try to pet it," Pen said, sitting up fully now, concern etching her features. "Yeah, no kidding. I'm going to have to keep looking for food." "I'll be careful." "Be safe," she said, her voice serious. Gareth nodded and set out again, this time more cautious. He stayed away from the bush where he'd encountered the creature, keeping an eye out for any other signs of life. As he ventured deeper into the woods, he finally spotted another berry bush. This one looked different, the berries bright and inviting. He cautiously approached, examining the leaves and fruit closely. After consulting his data pad, he discovered these berries were safe to eat. A wave of relief washed over him as he picked a handful, careful to grab only the ripest ones. With his prize secured, he made his way back to the campsite. Pen was waiting, looking a bit anxious but relieved to see him return. "Got something?" she asked, her eyes lighting up as he showed her the berries. "Yep. These are safe," he said, holding them out. "Perfect," she exclaimed, quickly taking a few. They shared the berries, and Gareth felt a sense of accomplishment as they enjoyed their small meal together. After they had eaten, Pen looked over at him, a thoughtful expression on her face. "You know, it's moments like this that remind me why we're out here," she said softly. "Yeah?" Gareth asked, curious. "Yeah. It's not just about survival. It's about the experiences we share, the connections we make, and the lessons we learn," she explained. Gareth nodded slowly, considering her words. "You're right. Even in the middle of nowhere, we're making memories." They settled down by the fire, the warmth enveloping them as the night deepened. Gareth felt a sense of camaraderie growing between them, forged in the trials they had faced together. As the stars twinkled above, they shared stories about their lives before the expedition. Gareth spoke of his time on the nebula, his duties, and the adventures he had experienced. Pen shared tales from her military days, her training, and the challenges she faced. With each story, they drew closer, laughter and shared memories weaving a bond between them. Gareth felt a sense of comfort in Pen's presence, the weight of the world lifting as they connected over their pasts. Eventually, the fire began to die down, and they prepared for sleep. Pen rolled onto her side, pulling her jacket tighter around her. "Good night, Gareth," she said softly, closing her eyes. "Good night, Pen," he replied, settling down near the dwindling fire. As he drifted off, Gareth couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. Despite the challenges, they had managed to find joy in the little things. The night passed slowly, filled with the sounds of the forest. Gareth felt a sense of peace wash over him, knowing that no matter what awaited them, they would face it together. When morning broke, the sun peeked through the trees, casting dappled light on the forest floor. Gareth awoke to the sounds of Pen stirring, and he rubbed the sleep from his eyes. "Morning," she greeted him with a bright smile. "Morning." "Ready to keep moving?" he asked, stretching. "Absolutely." "Let's see how far we can get today," she replied, a determined glint in her eye. They packed up their camp and set off, following the river's path as it wound through the forest. As they walked, the sounds of the forest became more vibrant, the birds singing and creatures scuttling through the underbrush. Gareth felt a sense of exhilaration as they navigated the terrain, climbing over rocks and ducking under branches. It was hard work, but he enjoyed the challenge. After a while, they reached a clearing where the river widened. The sunlight danced on the water's surface, creating a mesmerizing spectacle. "Let's take a break," Pen suggested, moving toward the water's edge. "Good idea," Gareth agreed, following her. They settled down on a large rock, letting the cool breeze wash over them. Pen dipped her toes into the water, a contented smile on her face. "This is nice," she said, closing her eyes and soaking in the sun. Gareth couldn't help but smile at her joy. "It really is," he replied, watching the water flow gently by. As they rested, Pen's gaze turned serious. "You know, I'm glad we're doing this together," she said, looking over at him. "Me too," Gareth said honestly. "I didn't expect to bond like this." "Neither did I." "It's funny how situations can bring people together, huh?" she mused. "Definitely. I never thought I'd find myself in the middle of a forest, fighting off wild creatures and sharing stories with a soldier," he joked lightly. Pen chuckled, shaking her head. "Yeah, it's a bit unconventional, isn't it?" As they sat in companionable silence, Gareth felt a warmth in his chest. He had never imagined forming such a connection with someone in such a short amount of time. After their break, they continued their journey, the forest thickening around them. The path was uneven, and they had to navigate carefully. Pen led the way, her experience evident as she deftly maneuvered through the obstacles. "Watch your step," she warned as they approached a particularly rocky area. Gareth focused, following her lead. "I'm getting the hang of this," he said with a grin. "Good." "You're a fast learner," she replied, clearly impressed. As they pressed on, they began to notice signs of their ship nearby. The vegetation was different, and Gareth could see remnants of machinery half buried in the ground. "We must be close," he said, excitement bubbling in his chest. "Let's keep going." "I can't wait to see if everyone's okay," Penn replied, her determination renewed. They quickened their pace, adrenaline fueling their steps. Soon, they spotted a clearing ahead, and Gareth's heart raced as they emerged into it. There, in the clearing, lay the nebula. It was damaged but still standing, a testament to the crew's resilience. "Look!" Gareth shouted, pointing toward the ship. Penn gasped, her eyes wide with relief. "They made it!" They rushed forward, eager to reunite with their companions. As they approached, they saw Deeg, the captain, examining the ship's hull. "Deeg!" Gareth called out, waving his arms. The captain turned, a broad smile breaking across his face. "You two made it." "We were starting to worry." "We're fine." "Just a bit of a detour," Penn replied, her voice filled with relief. "Good to hear." "We have some repairs to make, but we'll manage," Deeg said, looking at the damage. "What happened?" Gareth asked, glancing at the ship's exterior. "We took some hits during our landing, but nothing we can't fix." "The main systems are still functional," Deeg explained, his tone reassuring. "Great!" "Let's get to work," Penn said, her hands on her hips, ready for action. As the crew gathered around, Gareth felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. They were back, together again, and ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. The days that followed were filled with hard work and camaraderie. They repaired the ship, sharing stories and laughter as they worked together. Gareth felt a sense of belonging among them, a feeling he had longed for. Through it all, his bond with Penn deepened. They learned to rely on each other, supporting one another through the tasks at hand. One evening, as they sat around a fire after a long day, Gareth reflected on their journey. "You know, this has been one of the most challenging yet rewarding experiences of my life," he said. Penn nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I feel the same. It's incredible how much we've grown in such a short time." "I'm grateful for you," Gareth admitted, his voice sincere. "You've made this experience so much better." Penn looked at him, her eyes shining. "I feel the same way. I couldn't have asked for a better partner on this journey." As the fire crackled, they shared a comfortable silence, each lost in their thoughts. Gareth couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of their adventures together. With their ship repaired and their spirits high, the crew prepared for their next journey. They had faced challenges and overcome them, and Gareth knew they were ready for whatever lay ahead. As they set off into the unknown, Gareth felt a sense of hope and excitement. With Penn by his side, he knew they could tackle anything the universe threw their way. And as the stars shone brightly above, he realized he had found not just a companion but a true friend, ready to share in all the adventures life had to offer. Their journey was far from over, it was only just beginning.